and gentlemen, honorable jury and dear opponents. It's a pleasure to stand here and talk and debate a subject whose answer honestly should be so self-evident that anyone with their faculties intact already knows it. The topic at hand, unrestricted content. Creation leads to chaos rather than productive freedom. Is really not up for debate. In fact, if this were phrased as a simple question, the answer will be a surrounding yes. But I'm sure you notice as it's framed as an assertion, an affirmation, because honestly, to think otherwise will be a little bit foolish, don't you think? Now, I'm actually aware that our dear opponents may not see it in that way. I understand that there are among of us those, for reasons I can only assume are deeply personal, that prefer to close their eyes, their ears, close their hearts to any sensible argumentation. After all, as the saying goes, it's hard to reason with those who've already made up their minds to spread chaos under the guise of absolute freedom. But let's focus on facts, not future distractions. While I have no doubt my esteemed opponents will try to claim that complete freedom of expression through content creation is crucial, it's important to recognize the destructive potential when that freedom is taken on the extremes. Think, if you will, about the overwhelming prevalence of fake news, harmful trends, and unmothered forums, or even organized campaign to silence marginalized groups of people. Sure, there's more to the issue, but I won't waste time evoking the obvious. After all, you've been all victims before of this chaos. You've seen the effects and deep down, you know, you wish it wasn't so. I suspect you'd rather people kept their venomous and words to themselves, that the internet never spiraled so far and that we didn't see this rapid erosion of meaningful discourse by degrees. Now, perhaps my opponent will tell you that unrestricted content creation frees the mind, allowing it to wonder, innovate, and express itself without moral or social boundaries. Lovely in theory, right? But unfortunately, that argument doesn't hold up, at least not in reality. You see, the absence of boundaries doesn't encourage creativity. It often kills it. Unrestricted content creation, just like absolute freedom, paradoxically stifles innovation. When there are no rules, no framework, no structure, there's nothing to push against, no challenge to overcome. The creative process becomes stagnant. As Kant so rightly pointed out, limitation actually provides the framework necessary for creativity to flourish. Take the sonnet, for instance, a rigid structure that inspired poets to create some of the greatest works of literature. Constraints force creators to think outside the box, to be clever and inventive. Without boundaries, creators lose the spark of innovation. Because if everything is allowed, nothing feels unique anymore. Ultimately, this idea that unrestricted content creation somehow sparks creativity is simply a myth. Look at art. Look at poetry. It's the boundaries that challenge us, that force us to think beyond the obvious. Without them, we're just shouting into a void of endless noise, desperately trained to stand out while everything gets drowned in sameness. Thank you.
Content creation sparks and fuels the movement of progress in our digital era where everything is cyber-connected. Limiting this freedom only leads to holding back humanity. Embrace the growth. Do not try to restrict it. Ladies and gentlemen, dear audience, members of the jury, honorable opponents, greetings. Under these emotional and striking rhythms, I am here standing before you pleased and honored to awaken you to the truth. Content creation is based on the concept of freedom of speech. It has always been, as well as it has always been the bedrock of innovation. It had offered people the opportunity to share their ideas, express themselves, push norms, challenge boundaries. However, when restrictions are placed on this freedom, we only risk stifling that same flow of information and ultimately hindering and slowing our collective growth. And this, dear audience, was clearly observable throughout history. Major groundbreaking discoveries have often come from those who, quote-unquote, dared to challenge the traditional authority at that time. Examples like Nicolaus Copernicus, who defied the centuries of belief by proposing a sun-centered universe. Galileo Galilei, risking condemnation, provided solid evidence that solidified his model of a heliocentric universe. Darwin's theory of evolution through natural selection challenged the traditional religious beliefs at that time. But wait, haven't you noticed something? Coincidentally and ironically, all of those that I just mentioned were either executed or persecuted. Executed? Why? Well, that's what you get for legitimately revolutionizing the word. Guten Nachmittag. My name is Immanuel Kant, and I was a German philosopher who fought for freedom of speech in many of my essays. I say in my booklet, and I quote, God, freedom, and immortality are untenable in the light of pure reason. This suggests that each and any one of you should think independently and abstractly of the word, as we perceive it at
POI?
Sure.
So earlier you mentioned, what world will we be living if you claim not to respect the rules?
Excuse me, I did not understand the question.
Earlier in your introduction, you said that we must not follow the rules.
No, I did not say that. Maybe if you paid more attention, you would have noticed. Thank you. So, as I was saying now, in order for you all to understand all what I'm talking about, I suggest a little mental exercise. Imagine if you, yes, you who's listening to me right now, had lived in a world where each one of your actions, each one of your thoughts was controlled and dictated by some limits. These limits that you claim to defend are not only about silence who was considered scandalous, it's about forcing humanity into one and only one approved perspective. Can't you see? You mentioned earlier marginalized minorities. We're erasing the diversity of the human race. We're allowing some entity to force their views as the norms. And let me ask you, what are the norms anyway? Doing just like everyone else? Well, in that case, what's even the point of being human if we're all the same? Thank you.
Dear audience, did you know that on our planet, more than 64% of people cannot tell the difference between reality and the fiction online? That's why every word, unchecked and unfiltered, can become a weapon. And that is what unrestricted content creation brings to the table. Ladies and gentlemen, any one of those who did their research correctly know that the unrestricted content have many impacts. Either an economic one, which sums up in the fact that intellectual property is being violated by the copyright thieves or by the exploitation of monetization systems. Likewise, we can also find a cultural impact, which comes down to the erosion of cultural identities. And as everybody here knows, when scrolling on Instagram or TikTok, we see different places all over the world. Different traditions, different languages, and different cultures. All this leads to a change in the human perspective. Every human will accommodate to a new mindset, but they won't be able to accommodate anymore to their real living environment. Let me continue by giving a simple example. Each person here has already seen one of those videos where something bad happens to a disabled person. Well, let me tell you that that even our school doesn't accept that. All your education doesn't accept it. So why do you refrain about the fact that unrestricted contents lead to productive freedom. Let's also discuss the fact that freedom has to come eternally with responsibility. And as George Bernard Shaw once wrote in his book, The Intelligent Woman's Guide to Socialism and Capitalism, liberty means responsibility. That is why most men dread it. But as we all know, in the Moroccan society, the lateness is a nuisance. Don't tell me you've never been late to a meeting or to a course. Well, that is the problem. Why can't we become like the Japanese people? I have the answer. We are too much attached to our culture. We are too much attached to our culture. Social gatherings tend to follow a more flexible schedule with a polychronic time culture where relationships and personal interactions are prioritized over strict adherence to the clock. So before we ask for unrestricted contents, we need to seek for a change of mindset. To sum up, although unrestricted...
PI?
Yes?
Do you think we should abandon our culture?
No, I don't think that we should abandon our culture, but I think that we have to change our mindset toward how we look at the culture and how we exert it. To sum up, although unrestricted content seems to be empowering the freedom, I think that it has a far more destructive impact. It leads to chaos, because with this content which is unrestricted is maybe a fake news, and according to an MIT study, the fake news spreads 6 times faster than a real one. So we cannot ensure that an unsupervised information can be reliable, and its unchecked spread can cause the harm of our society. So the thing is, if the government just lets it flow, it may cause the destruction of our planet, and given our actual circumstances, it will destroy us. Thank you.
Matteo Di Marco Palmieri once said, "No rational person can do anything but thank God for the possibility of living in this era." That's what he had stated in the 15th century when the very first attempt to establish freedom of expression began for the first time in Western Europe. Dear audience, what if we had lived in a world where countries achieved full democratization? In a time we gained the right to speak and express ourselves. We are living in an era when democracy reigns, a system that thrives on the principle of freedom of speech and opinion. This hard-earned liberty is the cornerstone of our modern world. Dear audience, member of the jury and government team, greetings. Some of you might argue that unrestricted content creation leads to chaos, but let us reflect. First of all, as we all know, it is the very foundation of democracy to allow diverse voices to coexist, to debate, and to grow through discourse. Furthermore, how can we uphold freedom if we silence voices that challenge our own? True progress stems from the friction of opposing ideas. Discourse serves as the pathway of understanding. Do you truly believe our presence on the stage is essential? It seems as tough we are tasked now with defending the indefensible. Dear audience, doesn't it feel shameful to even debate the necessity of something as fundamental as freedom of speech and opinion? Because no, don't fool by them. These are not privileges granted out of pity by constitutions, but essential rights that form the cornerstone of any just society. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about chaos. Apparently, the right to speak, to create, to film, to write, to share ideas is the problem here. Not injustice, not oppression, no. The problem, according to your argument, is that people dare to use their voices. How dare they, right? How dare journalists like Shireen Abu Akleh risk their lives to show the world what's happening in the West Bank? Shireen, who wore a press vest and a helmet, was killed while simply reporting. But sure, unrestricted content creation is the problem here, not forces trying to silence her. Are we really supposed to believe that narrative? Are we really supposed to believe that her work brought her chaos? And then what about Yasser Mortaja? Another photojournalist who was shot dead while simply doing his job while covering protests in Gaza. He too was clearly identified as oppressed, yet he was killed. But let's blame the chaos on him down to document reality. How convenient. And then there is another one, Ahmed Abu Hussein. He too was clearly again identified as oppressed, yet he was killed. Do you truly believe that? Ladies and gentlemen, do you see what's happening here? The argument that unrestricted content creation leads to chaos is not just wrong, it's insulting. It's just to blame away from the system that oppress, suppress, and kill, and somehow targets the people who are brave enough to speak out for the truth. How can we possibly accept that? Chaos is not caused by journalists holding a camera and a microphone. Chaos is caused by those who feel the power of truth social media reveals. And chaos is caused by bullets fired at those who dare to speak out for the truth. How can anyone look at these sacrifices and tell that the people, journalists like Shireen, Ahmed, Yasser, and so on, and tell that the problem is that they are allowed to express themselves? No, because the problem is when voices are silenced. The problem is when the powerful gone unchecked. And the problem is when we stand here and argue that somehow unrestricted content creation, the right to talk, to speak, and to create, does more harm than good. Wow, how do you believe in that? And to expose content, thank you.
Miss Leader of Opposition, your disrespect didn't hide your absence of answer. You acted like a guilty person. I knew you'd talk about the liberty of expression, the beauty of creativity, persecution, but I knew you'd forget the negative side. But don't worry, I'll come to it. Yes, I predicted it, and you did it. Maybe I need to start a magician career. Imagine a world where you can do, say, or create anything. Wouldn't it be beautiful? We've always dreamt of a place where freedom would be the only rule. This is what we've searched for from the beginning of history. Imagine a world where you can say whatever comes to your mind. In fact, you can say whatever comes to your mind, but there is and will always be a limit. Yes, if people were as good as I thought, if people were as responsible as I thought, there would be no chaos. But look at social media today. Even with restricted content creation, chaos is there. So imagine if anybody could create anything. This would lead us to more than chaos. I'll go even further. It would lead us to a third world war. It's just not viable as a solution. Being myself a content creator, I do think that projective freedom is one of the most important pillars on the internet. But there must be a form of regulation. That's just logical. If people had an absolute freedom in what they could create as a content, the first domain that would be attacked is politics. Do you follow politics? Do you know that one video, one picture, one like can ruin presidential elections in seconds? And if this picture, if this video was fake, you tell me we're gonna tell them and people will understand, but it's over. How can you debunk a fake video of you doing whatever weird thing you can think about when it was shared and spread all over the world 15 minutes before it came to voting? Time left would be definitely not enough to repair the harm that has been done. In 2024, major national elections were held in more than 80 countries. 80 countries threatened by what AI has become capable of. Today, more than 30% of the European surveyed by the European Tech Insights study believe that AI has... Yes?
You mentioned that video is about politics, right?
Yeah.
What about the videos of the Gaza genocide who got censored and deleted and banned?
They are not restricted. Simply.
No, they were censored. They were erased, yes.
Look at social media today. Okay, they are, if you say so. And these people here are saying, it is not a problem, give them the projective freedom. Let them post as many AI fake content as they want because this is projective freedom. But I don't think you've thought about the disastrous consequences this could have. Dear audience, you know, before my debate I've made some research, and I wondered, how can we talk about the internet without talking about the type of content that represents 40% of the web? 40% of the web is pornography. As well as politics, this is one of the types of content that should be the most strictly regulated. Rapes, child pornography, and violent contents. They are strictly prohibited and, of course, juridically punished. And you want to legitimize the presence of this on the internet? Do you want to see your head added into one of this type of content with deepfake? I don't think so. Imagine for celebrities. And that's normal. Laws are protecting you, but our opponents here want to abolish them for a certain reason. Thanks.
To our beloved teachers and everyone on stage, greetings. Dear audience, today I participated in this debate to clarify the misunderstanding that my opponents have made, so that you, my dear, don't end up thinking like them, since there's no sane person who would defend something that is wrong in many ways. To clear up this fog that blurred your vision, I will play the role of the light who will guide you to the right answers. So, as we move forward, let's shine the truth and reveal what is hidden. Unrestricted content creation does not lead to chaos, but rather to innovation, empowerment, and social progress that would otherwise remain in the shadows. Where's the humanity if as my opponents are saying, sharing new ideas and innovation is wrong? Why would anyone live in a world where you can think but not create? Where the ability to produce, whether through art, writing, music, communication is restricted? And unfortunately, that's sadly what my opponents are trying to persuade you to follow. Let's light up the stage and begin by addressing the educational and informational benefits. Imagine a world where knowledge is unrestricted, where the minds of the young and all the like are free to explore, learn, and grow. The internet, for example, has democratized education. We can learn from the best professors, the brightest minds, and the most cutting-edge research. Yes?
Sorry, but on social media, creativity is already allowed, so what are you debating for?
Sorry, I didn't quite understand.
I say that on social media, creativity and liberty of expression is already allowed. So, what are you debating for?
Not all the freedom. Sometimes the freedom is restricted. Thank you.
Really? Okay.
Yes. Let's light up the stage and begin by addressing the educational and information. The internet, for example, has democratized education. We can learn from the best professors, the brightest mind, and the most cutting-edge research without limitation. Whether it's a child in a remote village learning about physics, or an inspiring action watching a tutorial for the craft. Unrestricted access fosters growth, creativity, and critical thinking, empowers individuals and societies. Chaos? I don't think so. On the economic opportunities level, the internet with its free flow of content has provided countless entrepreneurs and creators the chance to flourish. A few years ago, some would have scoffed at the idea that people could make careers out of making videos, writing blogs, or creating the digital art. But today, platforms like TikTok, YouTube, and others allow individuals to create, to build, and yes, to make money. Unrestricted content fuels a global economy where anyone, regardless of where they are or the potential, is succeed. Meanwhile, my opponents seem to be advocating for a world where only privileged ones have the right to access to economic opportunities. Is that their idea of chaos? I personally would call it a shame. And then, of course, there is the matter of Nikola Tesla. Tesla was a man whose groundbreaking ideas were often dismissed as too radical or too chaotic for his time. If his innovation had been limited by the very restriction my opponent championed, we might still live in a world without electricity. Tesla thrived because he had the freedom to think outside the box. That is what led us to one of the greatest technological breakouts in history, alternating currents, the very system that powers our modern world. The chaos my opponents fear is actually the catalyst for discovery. And now, let's address the favorite term, chaos. Let me address this once and for all.
The government team are obsessed with the idea that freedom leads to disorder. But let me ask you, what exactly do they mean by chaos? Is it freedom of speech, creativity, innovation? That's not chaos, that's liberty. True chaos is unrestriction, censorship, and the control of ideas. That is real chaos, the chaos of control. Now, I will ask you, which sound more like chaos? A world where all voices can be heard, or one when the only few hold the reins of knowledge? Thank you.
In a world where everyone has a mic, who ensures our voices get heard? Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed judges, and to my worthy, though mistaken opponents, let me be clear from the outset. This debate is not about silencing voices, it's about saving them. It's not about censorship, as you say. It's about safeguarding the very essence of truth and trust in our society. But before I address this House, let me confront the opposition directly. You claim to champion absolute freedom, unrestricted content, and unregulated platforms, yet you stand here without accounting for the destruction such freedom unleashes. So I ask you this, how many more lives must be ruined, how many communities shattered, and how much chaos must spend before you come to realize your ideology causes harm? You've romanticized your position so far as a defense of liberty. But let me dismantle that illusion now. Unrestricted content doesn't create freedom. It creates anarchy. And when anarchy reigns, freedom dies. Is this really what you're defending? I don't think so. Checkmate. The opposition believes in an idealized version of freedom. But here's the truth. Absolute freedom with regulation isn't freedom. It's a chaotic, lawless void where the powerful dominate and the vulnerable are left to suffer. Exactly. This is the world the opposition envisions. A world where anyone can say anything they want, regardless of the consequences, and the society crumbles in the aftermath. Now let's talk about the real-world impact of unregulated content. Misinformation spreads like wildfire on social media with devastating consequences. In India, take for instance, false rumors about child kidnapping spread on WhatsApp, resulting in over 30 innocent deaths. Is this really the freedom you want to make? This wasn't just about outcome or an accident. This was a tragedy caused by unchecked lies. Is this the kind of freedom the opposition really wants to defend? Because I ask again, how many more innocent lives are we willing to sacrifice in the name of this so-called liberty? It doesn't stop there. Platforms like Facebook and X, formerly Twitter, profit from outrage and division, which means they prioritize content that triggers emotional responses, our responses, regardless of whether it's truth or harmful. This isn't about freedom, it's about exploitation. The loudest voices dominate, while truth and safety get drowned out by the noise. And let's be clear about something. Freedom without responsibility isn't just reckless, it's dangerous. A world where nothing is sacred. Not our communities, not our safety, and certainly not our future will be granted. Thank
you. Dear audience, honorable members of the jury, greetings. Unrestricted content leads to chaos rather than productive freedom. Let me give you today a larger, more powerful vision where this chaos fuels productivity, innovation, and leads to productive freedom. But before that, I want everyone to highlight the word freedom. Isn't freedom the oxygen of the soul? Isn't it the power to say no? Isn't it being you without anyone's permission? Or isn't it, as Martin Luther King said, freedom is not voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. And history stands as a reliable witness to that. As one of 100 proofs, ladies and gentlemen, the French Revolution. The optimists will see this word as a symbol of societal improvement and change, while the pessimists and controlaholics will see this as a threat and the loss to systems they hold so tightly to. The French Revolution, ladies and gentlemen, was a 10-year-long period of political, social, and economical protests due to major financial crisis, inequality, and dissatisfaction with the restrictive government. In which writers like Rousseau, Voltaire... Yes?
You talked about the fact that we were the oppressors, but how do you know which type of content we are gonna restrict a part of illegality?
I will answer you in my second intervention. In which writers like Rousseau, Voltaire, and Jean-Paul Marat used their inks to mobilize the masses and advocate for democratic reforms. Who would have thought that this chaotic flow of ideas would lead to major results? The declaration of the man's rights and of the citizen. Still now for wanting to stop progress, as if centuries of a human struggle were for nothing. Apart from history, let me bring to light that to address misinformation, dear Prime Minister and Government Whip, media literacy is a far better solution than blank restrictions. Finland, being one of the most peaceful countries in the world, have gained their status as the leaders that effectively manage information. How, you may ask? By implementing media literacy programs in schools. Results? Finland has one of the lowest rates of misinformation according to the EDMO. And according to Digital News Reports of 2020, 70% of Finnish citizens trust the news, which is a much higher number than in many other countries. And finally, as any economist would tell you, social media has proven to be in the 2020s a powerful driver of economic growth. Platforms like YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram have offered opportunities like no other for individuals to monetize their skills. We are witnessing, ladies and gentlemen, 16 and 17-year-olds generating massive incomes due to their presence on social media. Take Iman Ghazi as an example. His unfiltered presence on social media has led him to building lucrative businesses due to his massive following. Dear audience, let's face the truth. Unrestricted content is not a recipe for chaos. It is the blueprint for the future. The chaos here is the force that empowers individuals and drives societies forward. The world is changing, ladies and gentlemen, and those who embrace freedom in content creation will be the ones shaping it, whether you like it or not. Thank you.
First of all, dear opponents, I would like to say, we are not afraid of chaos, but we would much rather not see chaos. Well, let's get something straight. From the pessimist side, like you said, even though we are actually just being realist, instead of romanticizing this whole mess like you are doing. Well, wasn't expecting any better of people who mask their real intentions behind such noble pursuits, you say? This isn't just some abstract debate about creativity or free speech. This is about the very fabric of our society. And restricted content creation doesn't just stifle progress. It unravels it. It's the destruction of what makes us human. Our ability to think critically, to engage thoughtfully, to rise above the noise. When you take the shackles off, when you remove every single limitation, you create a society where nothing holds back the destructive forces. Take a moment and look around. What happens when there's no filter? So no, unrestricted content creation is not the path to a better world. It has never been. Thank you.
Dear audience, do not get fooled by some ChatGPT lies that my opponents are spreading right now, because obviously your text was written yesterday, right? They're only proposing a band-aid solution. We're not solving the problem from its roots. We're not solving it from its base. The issue here is not, excuse me. The issue here is that individuals lack the capacity to filtrate, to differentiate the good from the bad. Check this out. A study made by Pew Research in 2021 claimed that 81% of Americans got their daily news from social media. Yet, only 21% of them considered themselves confident enough to spot the fake news from the real news. Now tell me, how does restriction solve that? No, exactly. It doesn't. We need education, not restriction. We need to educate people, sensibilize them, teach them how to spot manipulation. I think that's clear. I think it's obvious. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to scroll through the internet for hours and hours with endless unrestricted content. Who needs any accurate information or any sense of logic when there is a complete chaos? Oh, my dear opponent, as you probably heard me say earlier, one of the many impacts of unrestricted content creation is the copyright infringement. Did you know that when stealing a content for one of your videos, or when a creator loses his right, this producer will certainly lose a lot of earnings? All those artists who work with determination to create their art, only to see it misused or stolen without their consent. This loss not only impacts the creator earnings, but it also discourages the future creations, leading to a decline in innovation and the collapse of the creative economy. So I believe that I made myself clear about why the unrestricted content leads to chaos. Thank you.
The man of government had said something earlier, had talked about pornography, but let me clarify something. Companies spent millions, thousands, billions for you only to see the naked woman and the nude man on TVs. So, this is not what you called chaos. This is part of their society. This is part of their culture. We cannot stop it. Okay? And you had mentioned again the accounts that are stopped while talking only about Gaza aren't existing. But let me ask you, dear audience, haven't you witnessed a really bizarre and a weird phenomenon lately? Social media accounts supporting Palestinians are blocked and stopped, while those supporting Israelis are unaffected. You talked about freedom of speech lately, don't you? Didn't, sorry. Where is it? I can't see it. And you said there was no example. The biggest example are Mona and Muhammad. Thank you.
So, ChatGPT, write me an argument under 1 minute, please. Thanks. Have you ever thought about how advertisement is brainwashing you every single second of your life? On TV, in the streets, on the radio, to left, to right, behind you, in front of you. Advertisement is always purchasing you. Advertisement is always somewhere next to you. Advertisement loves you. Oh, but advertisement is a type of content creation, no? Yes, it is. And content creation means rules, no? If our opponents say no, I say yes. And guess what? I'm not the only one. By the laws employed by the government, they say yes. Content creators themselves say yes. And imagine you're watching your favorite YouTuber and suddenly an inappropriate ad pops up on your screen. Yes, on YouTube. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed judges, and my misguided opponents, let's write this up. It's clear that while some may wish to restrict freedom and control ideas, real progress thrives through unrestricted content. My opponents fear freedom and creativity, but the truth is, it's the desire for control that could lead to stagnation. Tesla didn't innovate by staying confined to limits, and neither should we. The chaos they speak of is not chaos, is not freedom, it's simply the fear of change. So let's reject that fear and embrace the power of unrestricted content. Thank you.
Disrespect was never a key to succeed, and devalorizing our work for your advantage was really not necessary. This is not just a debate. This is the crossword where we decide what kind of world we want to live in. Do we choose the chaos of unchecked freedom, where lies tears us apart and hatred fuels division? Or do we choose the world where freedom is not about what we say, but about what we decide? Let me be clear about something. Freedom without responsibility is not freedom. It's a dangerous illusion. An illusion the opposition is trying to embrace in our minds. We've seen the consequences. And we've seen how misinformation spreads like wildfires, how innocent lives are destroyed by lies, how communities are fractured and teared apart. The opposition is blindly defending this. They defend the chaos, but I refuse to stand by and let it consume us. And as I stand here as the last voice of this team, I would just ask you to please consider this. Thank you.
Dear member of the government, to answer your question really briefly, I will tell you 3 words. Media is biased. Moving on. Dear audience, as we come to the conclusion of this debate, I want to leave you with one simple but undeniable truth. Without chaos, there is no progress. Figures like Malala Yousafzai were not born out of perfection. It is chaos that forced them to rise above the norms and fight for what is right, even in the face of restrictive opposition. Malala was shot for her courage, but instead of silencing her, this amplified her message. And today, she stands as one of the symbols of progress that only chaos can ignite. And now, I must ask you, in your perfect world, would there be a place for Malala Yousafzai, for her voice, for her fight? A world where everything is dictated by comfort zone. And your fear of disruption only kills heroes. It doesn't nurture them. Thank you.